This is the first masjid I ever came to 7 years ago. When I came here, if you see this screen here, this was not here. When I first came here, you would come here and you could very clearly see downstairs. Ramadan of that year, some people put up sheets, and then this was later replaced with this. This is the first row. If you stand in the first row, and I'm about 5'5", you can just barely make out the imam. If you're any shorter than I am, you can't see anything. However, there are people here that say that you're not allowed to pray on the first row. You have to pray on the second row. If you pray on the second row, there's no view of anything. I spoke to the imam about that. I said, he understood what I said. He said, yes, you want to feel like you're part of the congregation? He agreed. Because I asked him if there's anything wrong with that. I don't want to go against anything that's wrong. He said, no, not at all. He said he would speak to, people, but it never changed. And so consequently, when I would come to pray, and I used to come here first because I like to sit in the first row, people would come and line up in the back. And I was told, sister, you have to move back. And I refused. So I would pray here by myself, while other people would pray in the back. And I didn't come to the masjid to pray here by myself, and neither do I want to feel like I'm standing out. I feel like I stand out here enough already. But I didn't want that. So consequently, I stopped coming.
I hate the wall. The wall used to be a curtain, and one day we just walked in and it was a wall, and nobody decided on it. It was just one person who thought that the men and women's sides should be incredibly separate, and he just told the people to build a wall. The men's side is incredibly bigger than the women's side. The women's side is probably less than half. The women don't hear the khutbah. I didn't even know that the khutbah was something that you listened to, that's something that had value, because we've always just talked because we can't hear the khutbah from behind the wall.
The barrier in the mosque is essentially what it's defined as. It's a barrier. It's not a bridge, it's a barrier. It's keeping people away from other people. It's keeping half the community away from the other half. And this is not very inviting. And it's not from the model of the Prophet's mosque.
The practice of using curtains or barriers varies by ethnicity. 80% of South Asian mosques use curtains along with 70% of Arab mosques. Only 39% of African American mosques have curtains or walls.
Yeah, the sisters are here to come in and they can actually see and interact with the message rather than just seeing it on the screen or being, hidden. I mean, that's just, and they appreciate that because they can connect with the message better.
Right now, see, a lot of Muslims bring that tradition where the women were behind the men. And they said the masses are based on that model, but that's not necessarily a model that was established by the Prophet of Islam. You go to Medina, go to Mecca, everybody pray, they pray. If the brothers got issues by sisters praying, the issue with the brothers, not the sisters, trust me. All right, remember that. Say, brothers, get your act together, man. You can't be around women without losing your balance. You got something wrong with you.
I do know that there are many women who like to have some kind of a barrier, some kind of a curtain. I honor and I respect that, but the minority shouldn't have to have their will against the entire majority.
Mosques where the imam is American-born are much less likely to use a barrier. 38% of mosques with an American-born imam use a divider, as compared to 78% of mosques where an imam is born outside of America.
The issue of the wall, I don't roll with the wall. Like, I'm adamant about it, right? But I tell women, I'm pro-choice. You know, if you want to go pray behind that, it's your business. I'm pro-choice. But institutionally, philosophically, no. Like, I have an issue with that, and I would stand up for that.
Physically, yeah, like that's an issue, right? Like the space and not having adequate, attention and care given to like where women pray. But I think beyond that, like there's so much, like the psychological effect and like the emotional implication it has is telling me as a woman, like, you don't belong here.
I don't know, it's difficult. It's very difficult to see because you're socializing and interacting with non-Muslims, but then when it comes to your own Muslim sisters, it's like you don't want to even look at them and say salam, and you just want nothing to do with them. I've been even told that my voice is my aura, so I shouldn't speak, So it's very difficult when you're trying to be a part of a community, but then you're told not to say anything.
I often say that the spaces that women occupy in a mosque are reflective of the spaces that they occupy emotionally in terms of the perception of their value added by male leaders.
There's halakha here every Monday for English speakers. You're expected to sit down, and you sit here. The men are downstairs with the imam and the presenters, and we sit on the floor here. You're completely cut off from everything that's going on. So you're just listening to a disembodied voice, and you're there with your notebook and listening. You can't participate. You really don't feel like you're in a group. If you have a question, you write it on a piece of paper, you crumble it up, and you throw it over there.
If we always alienate and underserve the women community, it's a long-term problem. Specifically, that the next generation of our women committees or communities are very well-educated, second-generation Muslim women who were born and raised here. You can't just treat them like, someone came from somewhere else.
You know of one masjid in the whole country that has a woman on the board? Can you name one?
Yes, there is one. There is one that I remember. I believe, I think I had one woman on a board of a masjid, probably in Pennsylvania, somewhere, Pittsburgh, probably. But yeah, maybe one.
هنا ما لا أعتقد يعني هنا لا يوجد في هذه المنطقة لأنه هنا قد تكون يعني أنا لا يعني في هنا فيه زي التدين أكثر العلم والعلماء السلفية في لهم تأثير هنا في لم أرى امرأة تشارك في إدارة المسجد.
So how many people are on the board right now?
We are like 11 people.
11. And is it mostly men and some women?
Yeah, there are a couple of sisters and the rest of males.
I was invited to a mosque to give just a lecture. It wasn't a religious sermon or anything like that. It was a lecture about interfaith. When they invite male speakers, they ask them to speak from the minbar. But for women speakers, where do they speak? Do they speak in the basement where the rest of the women are? And are the men invited? And if the men are invited, where do they sit? Do they sit upstairs in the musalla, or do they sit downstairs in the women's section where they never enter anyway? They reached a compromise. They said that I would speak in the women's section in the basement, which was also, by the way, the multipurpose room and the kitchen and the children's, babysitting space. But then I was interrupted because apparently my voice was too loud. Some of the brothers upstairs in the musalla didn't want to hear a woman's voice coming into the musalla. One of the women stepped up and she said, she was born and raised Muslim and her husband is a convert. And they have like a 2 or 3-year-old daughter. And she said something that always has stuck with me in the last several years. She said, my daughter is more welcome at my in-laws' church than she is welcome at this mosque.